Hi, this is Quinn. Welcome back to my podcast, Thinking with Quinn. So, about a year ago, my whole life changed because my family moved from China to Finland. And when my parents first told me that we're moving to Finland, I didn't really know how to react. Part of me was excited because I'd get to experience a completely different country and culture, and it sounds like a dream, and it's always been something that I want. But another part of me was scared. I basically spent my whole life in China. My friends were there, my family was there, and suddenly I was leaving everything familiar behind. What do you mean we're moving somewhere else? Also, I've never been to Finland before, and honestly, I didn't know much about Finland. I knew it's in Northern Europe, that it's very cold, and Santa Claus supposedly lives here, when most people are introverted there. And of course, I heard that Finland was the happiest country in the world. And I actually asked a few Finnish friends whether that was true, and let's just say I got some really different answers. I'll get to that one later. Now I've been living here for almost a year. I think I finally know enough to tell you what actually surprised me. Of course, these are just my own experiences. Finland isn't the same for everyone, but these are the things that surprised me the most. Let's start with school, because that's probably the biggest part of my life here. I actually don't go to Finnish language high school. I study in the IB program because en puhu suomea hyvin. That means I don't speak Finnish very well. And IB is also recognized internationally, which is helpful since I want to study in another country in the future. One thing that surprised me was that IB school here are public schools. In China, international programs like IB or A-level, which I used to study, are usually private schools, and they can be very expensive. Here, they're completely free. I thought that was amazing because it means more students can have access to that kind of education. Then I found out something even more surprising. Universities are free for Finnish students and many EU students. I remember talking to one of my Finnish friends. We were discussing what we wanted to study after high school. She said she wanted to study psychology, so naturally I asked, "So, have you started saving money for university?" She looked at me and said, "No." I was very confused, and she said, "Universities in Finland are free." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And then she added, "Well, for Finnish people." And I was like, "Oh, sure." So growing up, I'd watched lots of teenage TV shows where students talk about saving money for university, so I just assumed that happened everywhere, and apparently not. Another thing I noticed is that many Finnish teenagers have part-time jobs while they're still in high school, and summer jobs are really common too, but in China, that's much less common. Parents usually prefer their children to focus on studying first, and many families also give their children a monthly allowance, so working isn't really necessary for them. And here, it seems like teenagers become more financially independent first. But neither way is right or wrong, they're just different ideas about growing up. Another thing that surprised me was the relationship between students and teachers. In China, we usually call teachers Mr. or Miss followed by their last name, or it's teacher plus their last name. But here, students just call teachers by their first names. And the first time I heard that, I thought, wait, are you actually allowed to do that? And at first, it felt strange and disrespectful to me. But after a while, I realized students still respect their teachers. They just show it differently. And teachers here also trust students a lot. They don't constantly remind you to study like it was in China. Instead, they treat learning as your own responsibility. It's like they're saying, this is your education, we're only here to help, but ultimately it's your choice, it's your own thing. And that was very different from what I was used to. Even though I study in an IB school, I asked my younger sister and some Finnish friends about what elementary school was like. And honestly, I got a little jealous. They told me about arts and crafts classes, knitting, woodworking, and spending lots of time in nature. They even have swimming weeks before summer holidays. And apparently, many schools even give students ice cream before summer vacation starts. And when I heard that, I thought, wait, that's so good. You get ice cream at school? And it made me realize that school here isn't only about exams. It's also about creativity, practical skills, and most importantly, letting children enjoy childhood. Now, let's talk about probably the most Finnish thing ever, the sauna. So before moving here, I've actually only tried sauna once. It was next to swimming pool, and I felt super awful because it was too hot and I couldn't even breathe well inside. So I just have that feeling like sauna isn't really the thing for me. But when I came here, my teachers and friends and basically everyone I met told me that, oh, you should definitely try sauna. And I was like, okay, I'll just give it a try. And then I tried it. It's honestly so good. Like, I can't imagine that, oh, that's the feeling that you're in sauna. It completely changed my mind. And now I have sauna almost every week. It has become one of my favorite parts of living in Finland. Almost every house has one, and even many apartment buildings have shared saunas for residents. Some people even go swimming in freezing lakes afterwards. I haven't reached that level yet. Well, maybe one day. And what surprised me most is how relaxing it felt. And I understood now that it's a way to slow down, relax, and spend time with family and friends. Of course, we have to talk about the weather. I'm a person who grew up in southeastern China, where summers are super hot and humid. Sometimes just walking outside for a few minutes made you feel like you needed another shower. And before moving here, people online kept asking, why would you move to Finland? It's too cold. Won't you get depressed because it's so dark? Honestly, those comments made me a little nervous. And then I experienced my first Finnish winter. Yes, it was so cold, very cold, that I had to wear layers of clothes, and my Finnish friends called me crazy. But something surprised me. Life doesn't stop. People still bike to school, children still walk outside, and everything keeps going. And eventually, I stopped seeing winter as something to fear. There were also lots of little things that surprised me. For example, umbrellas. I really have to talk about that. So when it starts raining, many Finnish people just keep walking. You don't see them pulling out their umbrellas or rushing somewhere to hide. They just think that raining is a normal thing to them. And another thing is personal space. On the bus, people often prefer standing instead of sitting next to strangers. You know, like on Finnish buses, they're usually like double seats, like 2 seats next to each other, and they would rather stand on the bus than sitting next to someone. At first, I thought people were unfriendly, but later I realized they were actually being polite. They're respecting your space. Before moving here, I always heard that Finns were introverted. Some definitely are, but I've also met lots of Finnish people who are outgoing, funny, and talkative. So I don't think one stereotype can describe everyone. Nature also surprised me. You'll see squirrels, rabbits, birds, literally everywhere. And then someone told me that you can eat berries in the forest. I genuinely thought they were joking, but apparently they weren't. One thing I really appreciated was that people didn't automatically assume I was a tourist because I look Asian. Sometimes people would just start speaking Finnish to me. At first, it was awkward because I'd have to explain. Like, I would say, sorry, I don't speak Finnish. But later, I realized something. They weren't excluding me. They were including me. They assumed I belonged here. And I actually really appreciated that. At the beginning of this episode, I mentioned that Finland is often called the happiest country in the world. After living here for a year, I don't think happiness is something you can fully understand from a single ranking. One of my Finnish friends told me that people here often rate their lives quite modestly. A 7 out of 10 doesn't necessarily mean life is bad. It can simply mean things are going pretty well. And that made me wonder whether different cultures think about ranking skills differently. I also noticed that divorce seems to carry less social stigma here than it often does in China. And that made me ask another question. Does a higher divorce rate mean people are less happy? Or does it mean people feel freer to leave relationships that aren't working? I honestly don't know the answer. Maybe it's more complicated than either of those ideas. Living here has made me realize that every culture has different ways of thinking about happiness, family, and what makes a good life. When I first moved to Finland, I thought I was simply moving to another country. What I didn't expect was that I'd also start seeing my own culture differently. Living abroad makes you realize that many things we think are normal are actually just cultural habits. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts of living somewhere new. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thinking with Quinn. If you've ever moved to another country, or if there's something about your own culture you've only started to appreciate after seeing another one, I hope this episode gave you something to think about. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!